Let's talk about the shoulders. Our structural problems often stem from muscular size imbalances caused by daily habits of use, disuse, age, or immobility-related muscle loss. I briefly mentioned the shoulders in a previous video, so this discussion will point towards the often misunderstood or ignored causes. First of all, we are told to stretch to keep our mobility. Sure, stretching is most commonly practiced for thousands of years, yet it does not grow the muscles. So, if muscle loss is the cause of our problems, we need to go after the cause along with the symptom relief strategies. Remember, I mentioned that the muscle is spindle-shaped, so the thickness of the belly of the muscle can not only hold the connected joints tightly, it also will dictate the flexibility of those joints as well. Since logically, tendons and ligaments don't stretch very far, and our muscles are the real stretchy material. We need to emphasize on muscle development before stretching. Why the rotator cuff? As I said, if the muscle size is dependent on the use or disuse, so when it comes to rotation compared to other shoulder movements, there is no comparison. So, logically, we need to add rotator cuff exercises right from the beginning of playing sports or working where shoulders are needed to be used. When it comes to shoulder issues, we should all start by asking, why do so many of these problems point to the rotator cuffs? Including bodybuilders and powerlifters, why do most sports and work-related shoulder problems involve the rotator cuff? Their involvement in every movement makes them the weakest link, which is why strengthening them is essential. I developed shoulder issues when I was 38. After the Canadian Championship, I decided to get it checked. Since the cortisone shots and surgery did not work, I was told that I could get a shoulder replacement, but I would have to avoid lifting. I didn't opt for surgery until 28 years later. My experience forced me to figure out why I had these problems, especially since I never injured my shoulder during exercise. Critical thinking led me to connect my issues to a lack of awareness about muscular imbalance, especially as I aged and experienced muscle loss. The question then became, why are rotator cuff injuries the most common type of shoulder problem? To me, personally, it made me think to find real reasons and their common sense solutions. Understanding use and disuse behind size imbalance was one thing, but understanding how altered bodybuilding exercises can help those who did not find the solutions for their problems was another thing. A client's story, George. About 30 years ago, a man named George came to see me on a friend's recommendation. He told me he had tried everything and nothing worked. I asked what he did for a living. I've worked as a cashier at Safeway for the past 25 years, he said. I asked if the store had opposite-facing cash registers. He just laughed. To make a long story short, I started him on some exercises targeting opposite shoulder rotation and suggested some dietary changes. Within 3 weeks, his pain had noticeably reduced. The rest is history. I may talk about his case in more detail another time, but for now, let's stay focused on the shoulder. The mechanics of muscle growth, as I mentioned earlier, muscular imbalance develops when certain muscles are used more than others. This use causes the body to adapt, enlarging those specific muscles through an overcompensation system. I like to stimulate this system gradually by increasing load, not through willpower, but through intelligent progression. Here's a metaphor I once read, though I don't remember the author. If I give you a sheet of wax paper and ask you to put your finger through it without tearing it, how would you do it? The answer: use a pin to poke a lot of tiny holes first. Most clients don't know how to respond when I pose that question, but the lesson is clear. Gradual means gradual, especially when dealing with pain or injury. Age-related disuse doesn't just stop muscle growth, it accelerates atrophy, rotator cuff weakness, and everyday movement. Consider daily shoulder movement. There are already imbalances between the anterior and posterior deltoids. The rotator cuffs, being used the least, tend to remain the smallest and weakest. External rotation, the primary movement of the rotator cuff, is rarely performed in everyday life, making it the weakest link. That's why George responded so quickly. His vulnerability was rooted in rotator cuff underuse, a common issue in the general population. As I mentioned before, the small size and underuse of these muscles are at the root of many shoulder problems. Preventing injuries through mindful strengthening. If you lift weights, play sports, or use your shoulders for work, you must be mindful of training the rotator cuffs. I learned this the hard way. I never injured my shoulder from a specific movement. My issues developed over time. The gap widened as I aged, and my lack of knowledge only made it worse. Strengthening the rotator cuffs, the smallest and weakest of the shoulder muscles, can work wonders. That's why muscular development and fixing imbalances should be your first line of defense. When certain muscles are consistently overused, imbalances and eventually structural issues are inevitable. Anterior deltoids overpowering posterior deltoids, or quads outgrowing hamstrings are common examples. Lifestyle and work impact. Structure. If you're an assembly line worker or an athlete, the repetitive use of specific muscle groups will determine the structural challenges you face later in life. In youth, these imbalances may not be noticeable, but as muscle loss sets in with age, things fall apart. The gaps widen. If you can see what I see, you can proactively address these imbalances. You don't just preserve muscle, you create balance well into your later years. I have many stories that prove this. But if you ignore the issue, those imbalances may result in injuries. Injuries that you or your care provider might wrongly attribute to external causes when they were actually caused by your lifestyle. This is your body's way of demanding more understanding, not just symptom relief. Personally, I believe you have to become an artist. You must not only analyze the flaws in the painting, but understand your canvas, your body. That's where the answers lie. Too often, we chase symptom relief rather than root causes. The dead dog metaphor. Once, there was a community where people dug a well for water and settled around it. One day, a dog fell into the well and died. Soon after, the water began to stink. Alarmed, everyone gathered around the well. One person climbed down to investigate and shouted up, "There's a dead dog in the well." The townspeople looked to the mayor for guidance. The mayor responded, "Remove 50 barrels of water and then you can resume using it, but make sure to take the dead dog out first." The dead dog represents the root cause of the problem. So ask yourself, would you leave the dead dog in the well and just use a whole lot of deodorant? I don't think so. But treating only the symptoms while ignoring the root cause is essentially the same thing. If you don't understand the root of a structural issue, you're letting the dead dog linger. If muscle loss is the cause, how will you fix the problem without rebuilding muscle? A joint replacement without strong supporting muscles won't function properly. I had a client referred to me by my other client. Her physiotherapist told her that her surgery did not work. My exact words to her were that they have changed your joint, so the surgery worked fine, but you don't have strong enough muscles to move it. As she understood, she started to push harder, and within 3 months she was doing lat pull down. At age 75, turning things around can be very exciting. I've helped many by focusing on the dead dog. You must do the same alongside symptom relief. Otherwise, you risk blaming your body or even God for an imperfect painting. But often, it's a lack of knowledge that's at fault. That's why I wrote this. I don't want to take this insight to the grave. Understanding stretch and muscles are your body's stretchy material. Bigger and thicker muscles not only provide strength, but allow for greater flexibility, even in old age. Take chest development, for example. Men with larger chest muscles can lower the bar during bench press without overloading the anterior deltoids. Those with smaller chest muscles risk shoulder injuries doing the same movement. So, understanding your personal stretch points and totally focused exercising can be very helpful to regain and recover. Powerlifters do deep bench presses, but often lack the chest size of bodybuilders. This clearly shows that deep reps alone don't grow big chest muscles. Rather, the chest muscle fatigue makes the real difference. If you don't adapt your training style with age, shoulder problems are very likely coming for you. Training should be mindful, exercise should be a form of meditation. Being totally focused not only fatigue the muscle, but you can also prevent the injury because you are already present there. If your focus is on a muscle, but that muscle isn't completing the lift due to imbalance, it won't reach the level of fatigue needed for growth. If you intend to train your chest, but your shoulders initiate the movement, your chest won't fully engage to fatigue. It's not about partial versus full reps, it's about muscle thickness, balance, and intention. I advise against starting with deep bench presses if your muscles aren't developed enough. That's a common mistake by those who just watch someone doing deep bench press or follow standard advice without questioning it. Since they are in the vicinity, most think that traps are our shoulders as well. So, when someone complained that their trapezius muscles were tight, I give them neck exercises along with the heavier shoulder shrugs. Remember, our head weight does not lose very much weight as we age, but our neck muscles suffer the same percentage of muscle loss that comes with age. So, as the neck muscles get weaker, they pass the load to the neighboring traps. If the traps are not strong, they start to get stiff because of the constant use. Heavier shrugs build resilience to easily handle the head weight, but neck exercises can develop neck muscle strength to really work against the dead dog of the problem. Balance. The heart of training, a balanced approach to exercise is crucial. The fatigue response triggers the body's natural adaptation mechanisms, but each muscle must be pushed to its limit individually to promote symmetrical growth. Mixing larger and smaller muscles together can make you stop the set because of the smaller muscle. So, not only you would not be able to fatigue the larger muscle, you will put your smaller muscle in the danger of getting hurt. The solution? Understand, improve your technique, and use tools like wrist wraps to isolate the target muscles. Remember, you simply can't fatigue lats without the swing to bypass the smaller muscles. You simply raise the load on your smaller muscles by the slow movements. Since smaller muscles can't handle the heavier weight, you can't fatigue the lats. So not only you can't grow the lats, you may end up getting a tennis elbow without playing tennis. Movement. The essence of life, movement is life. Watch a baby in a crib. They move constantly when awake, without reason. Those spontaneous movements promote blood flow, oxygenation, and development throughout the body. On a deeper level, movement requires oxygen, glycogen, and many other factors, some known, some still mysterious. Even with all our medical knowledge, we don't fully understand the software that drives us. From ancient systems like Unani and Ayurveda to homeopathy, naturopathy, and modern medicine, every approach seeks to understand and improve this miraculous system. What matters is that we listen to the body and approach it with care, curiosity, and respect.